Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through our top 40 Dynasty Rookie Rankings with tiers, including IDP. I know this is one of the episodes that I personally look forward to because there's a lot to go through. And we are not only talking about Dynasty Rookie Rankings, but we're including IDP, which if you look around the block, you may not find that out there. So hopefully you find it interesting as well. So in this episode, you're going to be getting Joe and mine's top 40. So we're going to start off with tier number 1, Joe. What do you got there?
All right. In my tier number 1, at the number 1 spot, I've got Travis Hunter, number 2, Abdul Carter, and number 3, Ashton Genty.
All right. At number 1, I've got wide receiver Travis Hunter, running back Ashton Genty for number 2, and for number 3, defensive end Abdul Carter. Since we're combining them, I'm going to try to mention the positions because usually we do them based off of just wide receivers or just DNs.
Right.
But everybody's in this group here. You and I are roughly around the same. Interesting that you put Carter in front of Genty. Genty, some would say, is the number 1 guy. He's a blue chip guy. He did go to a great landing spot with the Raiders. I just think that you got to have Hunter as number 1. He's the unicorn. We haven't seen anybody like him that either play both sides of the ball. He's going to get double points. You're double dipping with wide receiver and corner points. He's got to be number 1.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the reason. Like, if he was just a wide receiver, he wouldn't be number 1, even though, I do think he's got the potential to be the number 1 wide receiver out of this class. But it's really the fact that he plays both sides of the ball, and we play in an IDP league, so you can take advantage of that double dipping.
So what made you put Carter ahead of Genty? I was torn, but I think here's the thing. This is the blue chip tier, right?
Yep.
This next tier, these guys could be on the borderline of blue chip, but these are the pure blue chip guys.
Yeah, everyone knew going into the draft there was the 3 blue chip players, and it was these 3 guys. So that's why they all belong in this tier number 1 here. But Abdul Carter, I put him number 2 there behind Travis Hunter, but ahead of Genty, strictly just because, the longevity factor potentially, just the running back position, even though Genty, is going to be a really dominant running back and going to be really good. Like, just running backs typically don't play as long, where Carter could definitely have a longer term value to him.
Yeah, Carter went to a really interesting landing spot with New York. The team is somewhat in shambles after last year, but they've done a pretty good job of retooling. The defensive line is very good. You got Brian Burns. He's a guy who you and I both had in our top 15 defensive end ranking with tiers. You've got Kayvon Thibodeau, who's been a disappointment, but he's no slouch. Now you got Abdul Carter. They could do a NASCAR package. They've got Dexter Lawrence. They've got a lot of defensive line options there. I think they could cause some havoc, and as a result, Carter's not going to be double teamed, so he's going to have a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. If anything, they're going to be focusing on Brian Burns and shutting him down, and then they're going to see what the rookie has, and until he shows it at the NFL level, should get a lot of single teams and should have some favorable matchups to take advantage of.
So we got a lot to talk about. So let's head over to tier number 2, Joe.
All right. And tier 2 at number 4, I've got wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan, 5, Colston Loveland, 6, Tyler Warren, 7, Quinshon Judkins, 8, Emeka Egbuka, and 9, Mason Graham.
This is where it's going to get interesting. At number 4, I've got Omarion Hampton, running back. Number 5, tight end Tyler Warren. 6, running back Travion Henderson. 7, running back Quinshon Judkins. 8, tight end Colston Loveland. And number 9, defensive tackle Mason Graham. I knew you and I were going to be bound to have some disagreements. And right out of the gate here in tier number 2, I've got Omarion Hampton in tier 2 at number 4. You have Tetairoa McMillan at number 4 in tier 2. But for both of us, neither of them, we don't have either of them in our tier 2. So I knew this was going to happen. I knew you were lower on Hampton. You also knew I was lower on McMillan.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not surprised that we've got those players so different.
So let's play, you versus me on this. So I'm trying to understand why you'd be against Hampton. I understand you think he runs kind of uptight, but it's like you're pairing him with Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, you know that he just loves to run the football. Najee Harris is on a 1-year deal. This guy's got a 4-year deal, possible 5th-year option. So I guess I just question why you wouldn't view him. I mean, as far as running backs go, I think he's a great prospect, and he's an all around guy. Not only can he run the ball, but he's a great pass catcher as well. So I'm just surprised because a lot of times running backs, it's like, are they going to get the volume? And I think he will.
Yeah, I mean that's the tough part. I don't know. I mean, at least his rookie year, like I think Najee's going to be involved, but it's like, do they bring Najee back? I think too, they're just if it's not Najee next year, it's somebody else, and I think they're going to really want to have a 2-back system there, and I'm not as convinced as you that Hampton's this like elite guy. I see
But
the
when has that
potential.
stopped you with Gibbs and Montgomery? That's a 2 running back system. We see that more and more.
Yeah, but Gibbs is an explosive player. To me, I don't see Hampton as that like shifty, explosive player that Jahmyr Gibbs is. They're 2 different type of backs. I mean, I will say for this episode, I am not slandering Hampton as much. I did give him some more respect for this than I have in previous videos. A lot of it just happens to be too. It's not just Hampton say like, kind of. It's tougher with the running backs too, because in Dynasty, we know that they don't really have the longevity and that value, and you have to kind of have your Dynasty team ready to and have it at a certain point in order to really capitalize off of taking one of these rookie running backs as well.
You're not wrong there. I agree. I'm definitely running back heavy, but I'm a big believer that you lean into the draft class. If it's a strong draft class for a certain position, you lean in on it. You don't go against the fray and go, oh, well, I'm going to take, a receiver or quarterback high because I need the position. Wrong answer. Like you got to go where the strength of the class is. Not to say that, maybe a receiver and cornerback really takes off and these guys are really worthwhile. I mean, mistakes happen just because the draft community, and the NFL teams, drafted, these players where they are. It doesn't mean that the players that weren't drafted as high aren't going to be successful. But there's a reason why all those running backs were taken within the top, 60, 70 picks in this past draft. So to me, I got my eyes set on if you think that you can be successful in the next 4 years, I'd say target at least in year 2, maybe year 3. I have a hard time passing up on a running back, even if it's not necessarily the position that has the most longevity.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like I said, I feel like, yeah, you do kind of have to have that window though. Otherwise, I feel like, or you take them and use them as a trading piece, and running backs are hot commodities as well.
And what were you done last year, right? Let's say hypothetically you were in a prime position and you wanted to win. Who are your options? You had Blake Corum.
Yeah,
probably left in the dust now. Trey Benson. Okay, he had not as good rookie year. Maybe he turns into something, right? Jonathan Brooks. If you got him, you're a toast, absolutely toast.
Yeah.
And he was a top guy. If you got Bucky Irving later on, hey, kudos. But it's like if you really needed that running back and you're like, oh, I'm going to go get a running back because I needed him, and then you did, you got burned. So even if you're not in a position, you don't know what your team will be like in a year from now, 2 years now, 3 years from now. So to me, it's like if you think that you even have a chance, you take the running back now because the next year's draft class. It's not a guarantee that it's going to be running back heavy. The next draft class after that, it's not a guarantee it's going to be running back heavy. We know it's running back heavy now. So, take advantage of it and same thing with these tight ends, right? We've been talking a lot about running backs. Same thing with tight ends. Loveland and Warren both drafted, I think, within the top 15. I think the Colts picked at 14. That's rare. I mean, it'd be great to have some guy on our producer. Hey, check and see how many times 2 tight ends were taken in the top 15. I don't think it's happened that much.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, honestly, tight end taken in the top 10 doesn't even happen that frequently. So 2 in the top 15 is definitely rarefied air, but shows you just, NFL teams really think that these guys are talented.
So I know I want to bring it back because I did mention it about Tetero McMillan. You thought he was 4. You must think I'm crazy.
No, I mean, to each their own. I don't think you're crazy. I mean, you haven't been a Tetero McMillan fan, and I know you have your concerns about him. Where I'm not as concerned about him. I mean, I think he's definitely going to be the wide receiver one on the Carolina Panthers here, and I like his talent and ability, and with the longevity of the wide receiver position, I think you can definitely justify him to be 4.
Yeah, I mean, to me, any wide receiver that lacks separation is a big concern. So he's got separation concerns at the next level. We also know that his enthusiasm, and maybe this will change, but in interviews he seemed to indicate that he doesn't like watching film. So it's like, is he really that guy who puts it all in? Does he love football? Which teams possibly questioned him on during the draft process. And thirdly, Bryce Young's his quarterback. I really liked Bryce Young. I thought he was going to be this dynamic player. Up to this point, other than maybe the last few weeks of past season, he's been mediocre at best. So maybe McMillan is what was needed to unlock Bryce Young. Maybe now with him and Leggett, and maybe this Panthers offense is not a disaster like it has been. It's possible, but even then, how much volume is Tetero McMillan going to get? He fits the Mike Evans type role. Maybe Dave Canales, which was a coordinator, with Mike Evans when he was in Tampa. Maybe he can figure something out with Bryce Young. Is it possible? Yes. I just think a lot of things have to go right in order for it to work out with him.
Yeah, I'm not as worried about that. I think, Bryce Young in the second year with Dave Canales and that Panthers offense, I really do think Tetero McMillan was potentially, one of the missing pieces. And I do think he can kind of unlock that offense, and really curious to see what they can do, because they've really lacked a true number one wide receiver. I know you mentioned like that, but I don't think he can be he shouldn't be he's a really good number 2. I don't think he should be the number one
I like
go-to guy.
Leggett.
And I'm not trying to discount Leggett. He's a talented guy, and I think he's really good, but I think he's better suited as a more complementary piece in a number 2 in an offense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's apparent, or else the Panthers wouldn't have done what they did.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. I mean, I don't think the Panthers take him as high as they did if they were concerned about him with the love of football and all that other nonsense about him not wanting to watch film or whatever.
He was a controversial player, though, even though in the draft community you had people, that were way the range on him was pretty wide.
Yeah. Well, it's because he doesn't do really anything flashy. And, that's why you don't like him. He's just kind of the guy that, was really produced really well in college and think he could carry over to the NFL.
That's true. All right. Enough about tier 2. Let's head over to tier number 3.
All right. At tier number 3, at number 10, got running back Caleb Johnson. 11, defensive tackle Kenneth Grant. 12, running back Omarion Hampton. 13, defensive tackle Walter Nolan. 14, running back Trevian Henderson, and at 15, defensive end James Pierce Jr.
All right, for number 10, I've got defensive tackle Walter Nolan. 11, defensive end James Pierce Jr. At number 12, quarterback Jackson Dart. Number 13, wide receiver Matthew Golden. Number 14, defensive tackle Derek Harmon. And last but not least, number 15, wide receiver Tetero McMillan. Now, I should have prefaced this at the top of the show, and I didn't. But when you're seeing our rankings with tiers, this is based off of, and we do it a little bit different here. We go based off what we believe is the best available player. We're doing it based off of best available. So we're not factoring in needs, right? So because that obviously changes things. If you are in a, in our league, if you're in a 16-team league and you desperately need a quarterback, then odds are you're probably going to be taking him much sooner than where I have the first quarterback at number 12, quarterback Jackson Dart. And Joe, you don't even have a quarterback yet.
Nope.
So, I mean, for those who say, how could you possibly not have, and what's the scoring that we're doing, all this other stuff, which are good questions. but we purely just looked at this from a best available player standpoint and not factoring in the needs because every team is different.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to preface that with.
Well, with that, then let's hear how you can defend how you don't have a quarterback in your top 15.
Well, like you said, Steve, I mean, you mentioned all the other strong positions in this draft class, and quarterback just simply wasn't one of them. And I'm not going to just force him up there because it's a quarterback position. And even though our league, like quarterback, is very important in our league, and you really have to have a good one. I'm not convinced with, a lot of these guys in the class. So I feel like I wasn't going to just artificially raise their value just because they're a quarterback.
Yeah, and for the record, right? I mean, we have it's a 16-team league. It's a deep league, so it's not super flex. But the way we do scoring, it might as well be super flex. But regardless of that, I mean, we really didn't look at this from a scoring perspective. Again, this is just based off of these guys are the best available, and depending on how you want to choose your team based off of need, then you kind of can make those changes accordingly. I think that Dart has enough potential, and I really like the pairing with Brian Daboll and with Malik Neighbors already on the roster, which made me put him here because of the pure potential. But I can totally understand why you do not have him right now. And for those who, would be wanting to throw tomatoes at us, I get it, right? You're entitled to your opinion. But I'm a firm believer. I'm not just going to waste a pick and just whiff at a quarterback position. I mean, it's no guarantee. I mean, look at years past. I traded up and drafted Trey Lance. I thought, I was in good shape because I had Trey Lance going with the San Francisco 49ers. I was going to be, I'm in good shape. Or you could have drafted a guy like Zach Wilson thinking that, maybe he was going to be really good. You and I both never thought that was going to be the case, but he was drafted high. So, okay,
Yeah.
Right now, Joe and I haven't said Cam Ward. Yes, we know he was drafted number 1 with the Tennessee Titans, but based on the situation, based on the head coaching staff, based on the weapons, I mean, and based on just the caliber of player, of who he is, I don't see it. And I'm not willing to sacrifice these other guys ahead of him. I know you feel the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. I do feel the same way. And like you said, that's why I was, not just, I know quarterbacks and everyone is going to probably be wondering why we haven't mentioned one, but it's just, I don't feel like you got to reach on it just to try to get one. You shouldn't be that desperate.
No, I mean every draft class has it. I mean, looking, in the years prior. I mean, honestly, last year is looking like an anomaly, and I thought the class was overrated, but Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams and Bo Nix and Drake May and JJ McCarthy, it's like, and Michael Penix, right? It's like, man, like, but it was again lean into the draft. 6 quarterbacks taken within the top 12, top 13. That never had happened before. So lean into the class. But before that, it's like, okay, am I going to take, one of these rookie quarterbacks who were drafted really high and your Blake Bortles of the world or your Daniel Jones of the world, or, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, I don't see the value there.
Yeah. I mean, Cam Ward was number 1, but in last year's draft, I mean, he would have been the, quarterback 7 probably.
Yeah, right around there. Absolutely.
I mean, I think he would have been behind Bo Nix. I mean, maybe it's a debate. I know people are saying Bo Nix would be a second-round pick, so maybe it's a debate whether or not he gets taken over Bo Nix or not. But at least 6 or 7 at most.
I will say I like to see that this compared to last year, you're much more balanced with your offense and defense. But honestly, that may be due to the fact that this class on defense is way stronger than last year's.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this defensive class, I mean, that's where really a lot of the depth in this draft was. It was on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, so definitely giving it the respect that they deserve.
Now, I'm surprised you had Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle, over Walter Nolan. Kenneth Grant's going to be more of a nose tackle type, but he's a dancing bear, and he could very well be that Dexter Lawrence type player. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of nose tackles be that productive, but I definitely think he's capable. So I do have him in my top 40. I'm a little bit more concerned about him.
Yeah, I just don't think we really saw him play at his capability in college and at Michigan, and I think he's got a really high ceiling. And if he plays to it, I mean, I think he's got a chance to really be a dynamic defensive tackle and a difference maker here. And we talked about it before. IDP leagues, like, defensive tackles are hard to come by the depth there. Like, it's important to have a good one, and if he truly develops into his capabilities and as athleticism, I definitely think he'll be deserving up here.
Now, I am shocked that you have, and this might be more shocking than even I knew that you were going to rank Hampton lower, but you have Caleb Johnson ahead of Omarion Hampton and Travion Henderson.
Yeah.
Why?
Look, I think people are kind of sleeping on Caleb Johnson, for the same similar reasons why you like Omarion Hampton. I mean, like, this guy is going to be the bell cow guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And what is Arthur Smith and the Pittsburgh Steelers going to like to do? They're going to like to run the ball. And there's no way Mike Tomlin's going to let 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers drop back and throw it a bunch of times. That's not why they got him there. And, they already have, Darnell Washington, who already acts like his sixth offensive line, Pat Frying with Jonnu Smith. They're going to be running a lot of heavy and tight end sets, and they're going to like to run the ball. And, Caleb Johnson, I think, is a talented runner, and he went to the perfect spot and the perfect system for his running style.
What about Jaylen Warren?
He's going to be a third down back. I mean,
he took a lot away from Najee Harris over the past 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, I think Caleb Johnson could be an upgrade over Najee Harris, though.
I mean, maybe. I mean, you always say he was 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I mean, that was
which is valuable. I mean, and Najee, look, I mean, Najee, had was always a respectable. Didn't always finish at the top, but always had 1,000 yards and was able to play a full season all the time. So, in Steelers' offensive line's only getting better. And yeah, I mean, I really like Caleb Johnson. I think he's got a lot of potential.
One other guy I think is kind of interesting is that you haven't said yet is Matthew Golden. Is it just because he's with the Packers and you just don't like that situation that you've never had like a Packers receiver that's been an alpha guy since Rodgers?
Sure, and that I'm not the biggest believer in Matthew Golden either. I mean, big whoop, the guy ran a 4.2940. Sure, it certainly didn't look like it on the tape when you watched it. I mean,
no.
He's getting caught from behind a lot. Like, I don't know. Everyone's enamored by the 40 time and everything. I'm just not as convinced on him and sold. And the fact that he's going to a crowded, Green Bay wide receiver room certainly didn't help.
It's not that crowded anymore, though. The herd's kind of been thinned out. I mean, Dobbs has 1 year left. He's going to be gone. Christian Watson tore his ACL. Reed's talking with his agent and wondering whether or not he's actually, a main part of the team. So it's like, I mean, now they did draft Savion Williams, which I thought was kind of interesting. I mean, they're just bringing different types of receivers that honestly they haven't had in a very long time, if ever, honestly. I mean, I can't remember the last time the Packers had a speedy guy like that. Can you? I mean, they had like guys like Devontae Adams, they had Jordy Nelson, back they had guys like Donald Driver. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't remember them ever having like a real speed guy. James Jones wasn't a speed guy. But
even though those guys weren't really necessarily speed guys, they were still able to get open and behind defenses.
I get that. I'm just wondering what it would look like with Matt LaFleur. And obviously he wasn't the head coach for some of the receivers I was talking about. But I'll be curious to see how he uses them as a chess piece.
Plus, one of the things I am concerned about with Golden is like he didn't really – I don't think he's that shifty. I think he's like a straight line speed guy. So, like, I don't – he's not like Jaden Reed.
That's good with Love, though. I mean, like, Love hit Dontavian Wicks a few times with the long ball.
Sure, but I think he's just going to turn into a boom or bust player, though, kind of like what Christian Watson's been. When he gets one of those deep touchdowns, you're happy. True. And if he doesn't, I think you're going to be disappointed. And I think that's just kind of where Matthew Golden's going to be. I think it's going to be very tough to figure out, be able to start him on a consistent basis.
I guess that's a good point. I mean, I know I didn't mention a lot of speeds guys, but I guess Watson was that. And Watson was drafted early in the second round. So I guess they have tried that experiment before.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's head over to tier number 4. Who do you got there?
Okay, at number 16, I got running back R.J. Harvey. 17, defensive tackle Derek Harmon. 18, wide receiver Matthew Golden. 19, wide receiver Luther Burden III. And 20, linebacker Carson Schlesinger.
Okay, at number 16, I've got quarterback Cam Ward. 17, wide receiver Emeka Ibuka. 18, linebacker Jihad Campbell. Number 19, safety Nick Eman-Wari. And number 20, running back RJ Harvey. Gotta say, Joe, I don't know what to think. Whether it's very bold, no quarterback yet. We're going through 20 guys, no quarterback yet for Joe. But talking about tier 4 here, we both got RJ Harvey in this tier. Not surprised that the resident Broncos fan has him higher than me. I do like Harvey a lot, and he definitely grew on me with the Broncos taking him when they did and the opportunity. Now, I didn't really move him. I had the temptation to want to bring him down even lower after the signing of J.K. Dobbins. That one kind of threw me for a loop because I think people thought that RJ Harvey was just going to get all this opportunity. And I'm honestly, it's kind of a head scratcher to me, the J.K. Dobbins, acquisition. So maybe you can help enlighten me and those who are tuning into the episode, because it's like you drafted Audric Estime. I want to say, was it the 3rd or 4th round they drafted Audric Estime?
Like the 5th round.
5th? Okay, that's a little bit later then. I guess then the draft capital doesn't matter as much. But anyways, I mean, Sean Payton has hyped him up at least, I feel like, for certain ways. So you got him, you got RJ Harvey, and you've got Jaleel McLaughlin still on the roster. I would think McLaughlin's going to be as good as gone. And then you go ahead and bring in J.K. Dobbins. So it's like, the Broncos have a stable of running backs yet again. But the problem under the Payton regime is, I mean, he doesn't let his running backs get momentum. Every 1 or 2 snaps, he switches them. So I think everybody, I think in the Dynasty community was viewing Harvey as this Dynasty darling that everybody wanted. They loved the selection of Harvey to the Broncos and thought he was going to be the next Alvin Kamara is what I've been hearing. And I kind of was buying into that narrative. And obviously he's on a rookie deal, and J.K. Dobbins would only be there for 1 year. But it does curve my enthusiasm a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. But look, I think what Sean Payton was doing last year is an anomaly. Like, typically, he likes to use 2 backs, not like interchange them, switch them. I think he was purely trying to figure out what he had at running back. Ironically enough, the Broncos had like the 3rd best win rate in terms of run blocking last year, but you wouldn't know it because the running game sucked. Bo Nix was the leading rusher in a lot of games. So to me, that just showed how they didn't have any running backs. And I think Sean Payton kept alluding to the fact that he didn't like the running backs that the Broncos had in their own room. They draft, RJ Harvey. I think, J.K. Dobbins is a really interesting guy, and I think he's going to be a good complementary piece. But if you look in, 2 running backs in Sean Payton's career, they've always been able to produce, and they produce at a really good level for fantasy. So I think there's still room for Dobbins and RJ Harvey to really have a good fantasy output. And we'll see how long J.K. Dobbins can actually stay healthy for as well.
Point.
I mean, that's a big part of it.
Who would you say, at least for this next season, right? I'm not talking Dynasty. Who do you think will be more productive, Harvey or Dobbins, if he stays healthy the whole way?
Yeah, I think it's tough because I think they're going to do it in different ways. Like I do think, Dobbins could maybe be the starting running back out of the gate. But I think there's going to be still plenty of room for RJ Harvey in the passing game. Maybe he doesn't get the rushing attempts, but Javonte Williams had over 70 targets at the running back position last year. Didn't really do much with them. So I think RJ Harvey will be heavily involved in the passing game, where I don't think that'll necessarily be J.K. Dobbins' role there.
So it was interesting in this tier. This is the first time where you and I are both talking about a linebacker. I have Jihad Campbell. You have Carson Schwessinger. Talk to me about why you ended up going with Schwessinger ahead of Campbell on this one.
Yeah, well, I think, Schwessinger, for one, is going to be able to have an immediate impact where, not so sure with Jihad Campbell. I mean, he's nursing a shoulder injury there. So we'll see when he's going to be able to take action there. But to me, that just the already kind of dealing with some injuries is a little bit concerning, even though I really like Jihad Campbell. I think he's a talented player. I don't have him too far off here, but I've always had like Schlesinger as my number one, dynasty linebacker. So didn't change that here.
Yeah, I mean, once we saw JOK, the message come out that he was going to be out for the year, that kind of made you think, oh, okay, that's what the front office was thinking when they drafted him, is
Yeah.
that he's going to go ahead and replace him. Who knows? I mean, who knows what JOK's role will be in Cleveland going forward. But as far as Schlesinger goes, you're right. It's a great opportunity. Whereas with the Eagles, now I did think it was interesting that, I don't remember what Nakobe Dean's injury was. But based off what Vic Fangio was saying in the press conferences, it sounds like that they don't expect Nakobe Dean to be back anytime soon. So it makes me think that it would end up being Bond and Campbell. But they both kind of play similar roles. They're
Right.
both kind of, they can shoot the gap. They've got that agility to go from side to side. So I'm kind of curious to see, does Bond still the man and Campbell's kind of second fiddle? Or does Campbell kind of cannibalize, kind of the output that Bond had last year? I don't know. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Bond will have the upper hand, just be the fact that he's played in the system for a year and excelled at it. So, where there's going to be more of a learning curve for Jihad Campbell. But yeah, it will be interesting because you're not wrong. Like their playing styles are very similar.
One other guy I want to talk about quickly, and I'm going to give, I want to put him higher. You have Emeka Egbuka at 8. I got Emeka Egbuka at 17. It's just so hard because of the Buccaneers receiver room is just so deep, and I question some ways why they decided they felt the need to take him, especially with the Godwin free agency signing. But they have a lot to work with, and Mike Evans is not getting any younger, so I mean I do like the idea where I think Egbuka could become Baker Mayfield's number one option. And we see how successful Baker has been these past 2 years. So I do like Egbuka. I don't know. I had a hard time because I feel like I wanted to put him higher. But this is as far as I could go because I don't know what his ceiling is. But I do like Egbuka a lot. I think he is underrated.
Yeah. I mean, right now the wide receiver room's crowded, but it won't be that way forever. I mean, like you said, Mike Evans is older. Heck, even Chris Godwin is older. Coming off of an injury as well. We'll see what happens there. So, the reports were, Egbuka was almost looking like Baker Mayfield's one of his favorite targets in camp for whatever that's worth. But we'll see.
You listening to camp news? This is different. Hold
Yeah,
on here. Are you turning a new leaf over there?
No, I don't typically, really read into that, but I mean, I
Oh.
would honestly have Egbuka's been one of my favorite guys anyways. I not much would change that.
Let's head over to tier number 5.
At 21, I've got linebacker Jihad Campbell, 22, wide receiver Jaden Higgins, 23, safety Nick Emenwari, 24, defensive end Mike Green, 25, quarterback Cam Ward, and 26, defensive end Mikael Williams.
All right, at number 21, I've got wide receiver Luther Burden. 22, defensive end Shamar Stewart. 23, defensive end Mike Green. 24, linebacker Carson Schlesinger. Number 25, running back Caleb Johnson. And number 26, defensive end Mikael Williams. Looking at tier number 5, we got some of the similar players here that either I've already said or you've already said, and now we're saying them now. Shamar Stewart's a guy who's really interesting. This is where I'm trying to think. I might have moved him slightly down after this. I mean, because he's still not signed. As of this episode, he's still not signed with the Bengals. And it really become quite a snafu. So, does it bother you? Is it too short-sighted to be concerned about this? Because once the contract's done, he'll be fine. He's already has some question marks as it is. I mean, he has a ton of potential, but he didn't have a lot of production. So I guess I'm assuming Stewart's in your top 40.
Yeah, he's in the top 40, correct.
Okay. Did that contribute to where you rated him because of what's going on?
Yeah, because like you said, it's concerning to me because like Stewart as a guy, he's one of the guys that trades over production, and we're already seeing like he's missing valuable time. He missed mini camps, and all that stuff is valuable, especially for a rookie. And then another thing too, like Troy Henderson is also not signed, which it impacts him at least for his initial rookie year here.
What are the
So
Bengals doing, man?
I don't know.
It
Like
just
that's
makes
just
no sense. Like they had their eyes on a Super Bowl. They spent all this money for T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. They have this like electric offense, but it's like, how do you expect your defense to be any good if their top guys, or the guys that you're expecting to have to perform, if they're not going to be in training camp, conditioning? I don't know.
yeah, it's really wild. I mean, it's not any surprise it's the Bengals butchering this either, though. I mean, they haven't been
That's
the
why you
best.
call them the Bungles, Joe.
Yeah, they always haven't had the been very good at this whole contract thing. Chose to really bolster their offense, but your offense only can take you so far if especially if you can't stop anybody. So those situations definitely did play a part for Shamar Stewart in my eyes to not have him higher. Just partially, like I said, we haven't really seen the production out of him. He's got all the traits, but would like to see him getting that these valuable reps in practice and things like that to really help him develop.
Another guy with the news, which I think is kind of interesting, and maybe you know a little more than I do, but if you've been seeing the news related to Luther Burden,
Not really, no.
okay, because there have been some reports of, I think he has like a hamstring injury or a something of that relate, some sort of leg injury, and it seemed like for the press conferences that Ben Johnson was kind of throwing shade at Luther Burden.
Interesting.
Yeah, it seemed like it almost came across to me like it was a little critical. Again, hey, producer in the back, go check this out. Let
Yeah,
it
right.
help us here. But I'm pretty sure I've been seeing that. When he was drafted, I was like, oh no. I mean, like I'm a Roma Dunze owner. I really believe Roma Dunze. I thought he was going to take. Now it's like, okay, now you've got Colston Loveland. Oh, great. Now you've got Luther Burden. Okay. Now you had DJ Moore, and you've got Roma Dunze. It's like, okay, now you actually, this room is getting, with a team that was devoid of options. Now it's like they're having plentiful options. I'm like, oh boy,
Right.
what's going to happen here? But I don't know. Some bizarre stuff, I think, related to Burden, who already they felt like there were character issues where maybe his actual talent, he should have been a first round pick, but slid into the second.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting player, and if he is battling a hamstring injury, that's not good. I mean, he really relies on that explosiveness and his agility and the cuts and everything like that to really make those big plays, and that's where his value truly is. So I'd like for him to be 100% healthy.
I did think it was interesting that you and I both had Nick Manwari as the first safety off the board. I think it's a great landing spot in Seattle. I'll be curious to see how it affects Julian Love because he's been a top safety over these past few years.
Yeah.
And they don't really have. I mean, I guess they have Ernest Jones, but they haven't really had a dominant linebacker since Bobby Wagner. So depending on how they depend to deploy Eman Warrior, I think he could get a lot of tackles.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Eamon Warrior's always been my top safety, even with the pre-draft process.
I feel like you wavered a little bit at one point though with him. No,
No.
you've always stuck with him. I don't know. Okay, fair enough.
I've stuck by him and had him over Malachi Starks, and just strictly he's more of that strong safety role. He's going to be moved around more than Malachi Starks with the Ravens. Now he fits a typical Ravens player. I think Starks is still talented, but being that he plays the free safety position, just couldn't put him as high.
All right, now we're heading into unshared territory. We're going into the tier number 6.
All right, and number 27, I've got wide receiver Kyle Williams. 28, defensive end Shamar Stewart. 29, defensive end Donovan Ezeraku. 30, quarterback Jalen Milroe, and 31, defensive end Jalen Walker.
All right, at number 27, I got wide receiver Kyle Williams. 28, defensive end Jalen Walker. 29, wide receiver Jaden Higgins. Number 30, tight end Mason Taylor. And number 31, defensive end Donovan Ezeraku. I did find it interesting, Joe, and if those who are watching this episode instead of listening to it, they would have saw my reaction, that you had quarterback Jalen Milroe at number 30, and you had him higher than Jackson Dart. That was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, I've said it before. I'm standing by it. I think Jalen Milroe potentially has the highest ceiling at the quarterback position out of this draft class. Probably could have, I mean, justified with that standpoint, putting him ahead of Cam Ward, but Cam Ward's got the immediate direct path to, starting opportunity in the snaps. We'll see what happens in Seattle. Sam Darnold, we'll see if he gets more than just this first year here, because they can get out of that contract if they don't like what they see out of Sam Darnold. But, Jalen Miller, if he gets his chance, and puts the work in and improves that accuracy and is able to get on the field sooner than you think, I think he's going to be good.
Even higher than Tyler Shuck?
Yeah, of course. I mean, not to take anything away from Tyler Shuck, but I mean, Milroe's just got, way more
No, I agree. I'm just
athleticism in there. And Shuck's an older guy too. I mean, he's spent 7 years in college.
Bingo. Yeah, I don't have Milroe in my top 40. I understand the justification. This is a deep class. I mean, there's just a lot of good players. I just couldn't put him in my top 40. One of those guys who I actually feel now you and I are a little bit different here. I've got Jaden Higgins at 29. You have him at 22. I guess we're not all that different. He's just a guy that I think Nico is the guy there. The question is, can Higgins really? How much targets can he truly garner? I like Kyle Williams better. Now you don't have Kyle Williams that far behind. I was very impressed by the tape in watching what he did in Washington State. Honestly, I'll just be real. When Chris Sims came out and said that Kyle Williams, I think, was his 2 or 3 receiver, I'm like, ooh, it's what? So I was like, let me look into this guy a little bit more. And I was like, okay, I could see why he likes him. And going into New England, there is not a true guy. Stephon Diggs now is kind of I don't know what's going on with him. I feel like he's an attention seeker. I don't know. I mean, he always was that way, but it seems like he's kind of even gone more off the rails. But he's only going to be there for 1 year anyways. Kyle Williams has a real opportunity. If Drake May takes this next step like everyone thinks he's going to be, then, the team would indicate that Kyle Williams are hoping to be the guy.
Yeah, and everything what they've been saying out of minicamp is it really seems like he is the guy, and it's kind of been acting like the number one.
You in the camp news again?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, look, whether or not I believe it, I mean, I'm just saying what the reports have been saying. But he is a talented
You're a new
player.
Man.
He created.
You're a new man.
Yeah, he's created the big plays in college, and think he's going to have a ton of opportunities with New England as they're trying to figure out who's going to really rise to the top and garner all those targets on this offense.
Yeah. Wow. You amazed me, Joe. I was not expecting this from you. Now, do you think that, real quick here before we go to the next tier, do you think that you and I have Jalen Walker too low? He's a tweener for me. I don't know if he's going to pan out as a defensive end edge rusher for the Falcons. I think they may have to shift him back to an off-the-ball linebacker.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's just potentially I'm viewing him as like a boomer bust prospect, and that's kind of where I have him. I was
surprised because you've been higher on him than I have been, and I actually have him higher than you, which is interesting. Same tier, but
yeah, same tier. But you're right. You do have him higher. Because I do see a path where Jalen Walker can pan out, and it's interesting to see how him and James Pierce Jr. are going to work in Atlanta. But they're just the case of maybe it doesn't, and then we've seen it before too with these tweener type players. It doesn't always work out. So that is a little bit risky for me. So if people want to put them higher, that's fine, but I just wasn't comfortable doing so.
All right, Joe. Let's head over to tier number 7. Who do you got there?
All right, at number 32, I've got cornerback Shadé Barron. 33, quarterback Jackson Dart. 34, wide receiver Trey Harris. 35, tight end Harold Fannin Jr. Number 36, defensive end Nick Scorton.
Okay, at number 32, got cornerback Shadé Barron. 33, safety Malachi Starks. 34, wide receiver Jack Betch. Number 35, wide receiver Pat Bryant. And number 36, tight end Terrence Ferguson. I am shocked that I have Pat Bryant higher than you. I guess I like the Broncos draft class better than you based on what I'm seeing over here. I guess, well, no, I mean, you and I both had Barron right on the button at 32, and then you had Harvey higher than me. So I guess maybe it's just Bryant, but I don't know. I'm getting caught up with this whole Michael Thomas hype. I recognize he had a low 40 time, but for Sean Payton to possibly, in most people's eyes, overdraft Pat Bryant for when he did take him, some felt like he would have been a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick. I believe he was taken in the 3rd round by them.
Yep.
That wide receiver room outside Cortland Sutton only has 1 year left on a contract. It's kind of a wasteland. If Bryant, who, is kind of looking the part at this point, ends up turning into that guy, I think he might be the guy, the Michael Thomas guy, or the Marquise Colston guy, as I've heard from some others as well, that Sean Payton really likes. So, I don't know. I think the opportunity is there.
Yeah, definitely could be. I mean, I don't have Pat Bryant in my top 40.
Really? Why not? As our resident Broncos fan, I'm a little surprised.
I just ultimately liked other guys better. Like, I mean, I think Trey Harris is really interesting with the Chargers.
I don't have him in my top 40.
And to me, like, that room's a lot less crowded than the Denver Broncos room. That's one thing.
Way.
Yeah.
Lab McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Mike Williams. No way.
Well, Mike Williams isn't anything. Quentin Johnston, he hasn't shown anything.
Broncos have?
Look, Broncos.
Devon Bailey and Marvin Mims. Give me a break.
Really like Marvin Mims. Sean Payton saying he's expecting stuff out of Franklin in his 2nd year here as well. So I don't know. There's just a lot of different weapons.
That's Evan Sean Ingram, Payton blowing smoke.
Evan Ingram is no part of the offense. He's listed as the Joker. RJ Harvey is going to be involved in the passing game. I'm worried about all the mouths to feed in this offense.
Nah. Those mouths are on a diet. They're going towards Pat Bryant.
I mean, I do like Pat Bryant, though. I'm not to discount, like, the opportunity could be there. He's going to have to earn it. But, I do like what I've seen out of him thus far and think he's very interesting.
What about Jack Besh? Do you got him?
Nope.
Okay, another guy. I love the opportunity in Las Vegas.
I like Jack Besh, but I'm concerned with all the hype that Dante Thornton's been getting because
he's getting a ton.
That is the rookie that's, and Besh isn't listed as a starter right now, and Dante Thornton's been getting all the buzz out of there. So I'm concerned about Jack Besh's role in this offense.
You've never been a camp news guy. Where is this coming from?
I don't know. I just maybe.
Oh my goodness!
Turned over a new leaf and more plugged in this year.
I guess so. Maybe you just weren't plugged in before, but man, I have seen that, and Thornton is getting a ton of praise, and I think he's a guy I definitely like. He's not in my top 40, but he's definitely a guy who I've got my eye on. I mean, because that Raiders receiver room is very light, so I think Besh could be very productive.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I like Besh a lot, but don't love everything that's coming out of the Raiders camp, though.
That's wild. One guy I really like is Barron. You and I both have him on the button at 32. Cornerback position is always a tough one to rank, and where do you put them? But he's a guy who's going to play that nickel spot for them. I think he can be a top 5 corner. I really do. He's going to be close to the ball. Very productive. Very, very. I think he can be a very productive player.
Yeah. Really curious to see how the Broncos are going to use him. And he's a guy I envision they're going to move around as a chess piece as well, and really take advantage of counteract defenses or offenses trying to exploit, setting guys in motion and creating mismatches that were there last year. I think that gets now filled with Barron.
All right, so rounding out here at our final tier number 8.
At number 37, I got safety Malachi Starks. 38, tight end Elijah Arroyo. 39, linebacker Demetrius Knight Jr. And 40, safety Kevin Winston Jr.
All right, at number 37, I've got defensive tackle Kenneth Grant. 38, tight end Elijah Arroyo. At number 39, linebacker Demetrius Knight. And number 40, safety Kevin Winston Jr. So for the record, and I should have said this at the top of the show, but Joe and I did not know what either of us were going to be doing with these.
Certainly
you
not.
know, we try not to, right? Because we could be influenced by each other or whatever. Oh, he has him here. Why does he have him here? So we're going in with no idea what the other person's going to do. And as we close out the show here, tier 8, you and I are looking pretty similar here.
Yeah.
We've got Arroyo, we've got Knight, we've got Winston, we got 3 guys here for each of us here. We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, really just a difference of spot number 37.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I like Kenneth Grant. I just, he's a nose tackle. That's the toughest thing for me. But I think he has a lot of potential. And I think the Dolphins are going to be pretty bad. So I think he has a real opportunity to shine. As far as the other guys, I really like Knight and I really like Winston. Knight was a guy I liked early on. As I learned a little bit more about him, he's an older prospect. I believe he's had some injury issues. But when the Bengals drafted him, we thought it was kind of an odd pick to begin with because it's like, okay, they got Logan Wilson. Jermaine Pratt had like this career year. So where's he going to play? And then obviously Pratt was cut and then signed elsewhere. So now Knight kind of steps in. So I think he could be very productive there. And then for Winston, he would have been drafted way higher had he not dealt with that partial ACL tear. And there is nobody. I mean, yes, they've got Amani Hooker. He's on a 1-year deal. Winston should step in and be that safety for the Titans. So I really like Winston here. This is where value comes into play because in your leagues, you may see in an IDP type setting here, you may see Starks drafted much higher, or you may see Eman Wari drafted that much higher. Honestly, for the value, you could make, in my mind, I say I'd rather take Winston in the 3rd round versus taking those other guys maybe in the 2nd round, and I get a different guy in the 2nd round.
Yeah, I mean, depending on who you're taking in that 2nd round, definitely could see that. And I think you could definitely make that argument. Like you said, I mean, Winston Jr. definitely would have been taken a lot higher in the draft had it not been for the injury. We've seen it all before.
Question.
I mean, you get that red flag on you, and NFL teams kind of avoid you, and you drop, and it turns into a value for some NFL team.
So that does it for this episode. We went through our top 40 Dynasty Rookie Rankings with tiers, including IDP. Not only did you get mine, but you also got Joe's, and hopefully you found the episode enjoyable. If you haven't done so already, check out our most recent episode where we talked about our safety rankings with tiers with our top 24. You're going to want to check that out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.